Welcome to The Secrets of Success. By following the proven techniques of the guests who appear on this series, you'll learn that even successful people run into detours and failures, and how you can apply their success techniques to change your life.
You're now listening to the most unique show on radio, the show dedicated to making you a success. Looking for a miracle? Then listen to the advice of our guest, Susan Shumsky, author of Miracle Prayer. Susan, thanks for being with us.
Well, thank you for inviting me, Bill.
Susan, what is the difference between prayer and an affirmation?
The reality is that everything we think, everything we say, and everything we do is a prayer or an affirmation, which is basically the same thing. And that is that we are creating our destiny moment by moment with every thought, every word, and every deed. So I truly believe that we have free will, and that whatever it is that we think, say, and do does manifest in our life and creates our destiny, our future.
And we're responsible for that.
Exactly. I believe that we're 100% responsible for our lives because, as Lord Buddha said in the very first chapter, the first verse of the first chapter of the Dhammapada, he tells us that all that we are is the result of what we have thought, which is it's really a stunning statement when you think about it, Bill. All that we are is the result of what we have thought. And then he goes on to say in the next verses, he says, if a person speaks or acts with a pure thought, then happiness follows him or her. And if a person speaks or acts with an impure thought, then unhappiness follows him or her. So he was one of the ancients, and there are many ancients. Ancient wisdom tells us that we're creating our destiny moment by moment through our thoughts.
Now, Susan, I know from looking at your book, you were actually a student of the Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, and people my age remember that he was always associated with the Beatles years ago. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes. As a matter of fact, I recently wrote a memoir about that. And Maharishi was my guru, and he was also the guru of the Beatles and the guru of Deepak Chopra. And he was the founder of Transcendental Meditation. When he came to America in 1959, there was no mantra, there was no yoga, there was no meditation. These words, these terms did not exist in the West. We just didn't know anything about them. Within 10 years, Maharishi made these terms into household words. And the Beatles really helped him to do that, because once the Beatles became his disciples, Transcendental Meditation became, the cool thing to do, the next big thing.
If the Beatles do it, we have to do it, right?
Exactly. It became so huge. Maharishi was on Merv Griffin's show. He was on The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson many, many times, and he was on the cover of every major magazine, Life, Look, Time, Saturday Evening Post, and so on. So he was huge, and, if you're old enough to remember, you know who he is.
Yes, and he was universally respected for his beliefs and his training, and you must have had just that experience, having him as a mentor must have been very interesting. Now, you mentioned, before you wrote your first book, you were actually getting ready to go on a publicity tour, I believe, and you had a very serious accident, broke your leg, and, etc. But through your strong beliefs, you were able to go on that tour. And even though basically, as you went on the tour, if I remember correctly, it was like, where is the money going to come from to pay for this tour? Somehow it appeared. Am I correct?
Exactly. And it was really faith in following my inner voice, faith in following my intuition, or the still small voice within, and trusting that with complete faith and trust, and just doing what the inner voice tells me to do. And for the past 30 years, that's really basically how I've been living, is just on blind faith, listening to that inner voice and trusting the inner guidance that I receive.
Now, do you think because you're a spiritual person, maybe your inner voice is a little more attuned to the outside world than most of us? We often run on automatic. We probably couldn't tell you how we get to the office, but we get in our car and we drive up the street, make a right turn and go 6 miles, and make a left turn and then make a U-turn and go back. All the usual things that people do. But are you more in tune than most because of this spiritualism and because of your belief in the power of success and affirmations?
Everyone has that potential within them. We all have intuition. There's no one that doesn't. For example, if you walk into someone's home, you can just have a sense of what it feels like in that home. Does it feel chaotic? Does it feel like a loving home? Does it have a good vibe? Does it have a bad vibe? If you go to a party and there's a bunch of people there and you meet a person for the first time, you have a sense, is this person uptight? Is this person angry? Is this person peaceful and calm? Is this person loving? So we all have this kind of sixth sense. We all have gut feelings about things. Some of us have actually taken the time to develop these consciously, but everybody is really intuitive, Bill. All they have to do is just pay attention to the fact that they are intuitive and perhaps listen to the promptings of their heart. Listen to what really makes them happy and follow that direction. Listen to advice from their higher self, shall we say, from that inner voice, which is their true self, and trust in that and listen to that and actually follow it, actually do what you're guided to do.
I guess we're also moving so quickly we don't take the time to do that, but it's really inside of us, and if we follow your book, we can learn how to do it.
Well, actually, yeah, I've written several books on that subject of listening to the still small voice within. And it's really, in my life, it's my central way of life. It's the way that I live. I trust what I'm guided to do because I know it's for my highest good. But I'm certainly not perfect at it. I make a lot of mistakes.
Well, you do it pretty well because I've read your book and a lot of good ideas. Susan, using that as for break for a second, would like our audience to know that our guest today is Susan Shumsky, Shumsky. Her book is Miracle Prayer. And Susan, can you tell us where the book is available and if there's a website where we can learn more?
Well, my website is drsusan.org. That's drsusan.org. And you can purchase Miracle Prayer and any of my other books, including Maharishi and Me, which is my memoir, my latest book. You can purchase any of those at Amazon or local bookstore, anywhere that you want to buy a book. You can buy my book. And
when you say Dr. Susan, a lot of us write for a Dr. DR, so is that DR or is that DOCTOR?
Either one will work. I have both domains, drsusan.org.
You make it easy for us. Now,
exactly.
Susan, you say you can perceive life in one of two ways. Can you tell us about our options there, how we can look at our lives?
Well, yes, we can perceive our life as though it's being done to us. In other words, we are victims. Or we can perceive our life that we're creating it ourselves. In other words, we are volunteers. So we either perceive that life is happening to us, or that we are happening to life, or that we are creating life moment by moment.
Now, No, go ahead. I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
In my opinion, I believe that we are creating our lives moment by moment, just as Lord Buddha said, just as Jesus said, just as all the great saints and sages and holy people and also very intelligent philosophers and so on, such as Emerson and many others, that tell us that we're creating our own destiny moment by moment.
Now, so you said to us either we're in charge or life is basically done to you. Now, when you speak to groups or talk to, a number of live people who are right in front of you as opposed to a radio audience, when you ask who's in charge of your life, what are the answers you get back? Is it interesting? Do they all go one way or is it 50-50?
I think because of the fact that the audiences I speak to are audiences that are very progressive they're more like New Thought or New Age type audiences. Because of that, they'll say, oh, I'm in charge. Even if they don't really believe it, they say it.
But I guess that's a good question for all of us to ask ourselves and really look at our lives. Are we directing the path we're going? Like if we go on vacation, if we want to go south, well, we better at least have the directional on or a compass or something, even if we're not going the perfect direction to go south. If we want to go north, of course, we do that. We're the ones who have to take the lead in doing it. And if not, it's either a boss or a spouse or a child or a parent or somebody or something in the neighborhood or, you know, wherever we are, that's directing us. If we're in the military, it's the higher officers in the military. But really, it's our life, it's our destiny, it's up to us. Is that the message?
Yes, absolutely. Take charge of your life. You know, take the reins of your carriage of life and drive where you want to go. It's really that simple. And I know that all of us face a lot of struggles. We face a lot of blockages on our pathway. We face a lot of pitfalls on that road as we're attempting to drive that carriage. But the reality is that if we persist, if we are motivated, if we take action, if we make goals, if we make decisions and stick to those decisions, then we can really create miracles. We can create anything. It's all it is a matter of making a choice.
Now,
You'll notice that everything in your life is about making choices.
Susan, what about someone who comes to you and says, oh, Susan, that sounds great, but, I have some bad habits that I've started my life off with, whether it's drugs, drinking, smoking, they're overweight, maybe they don't do the amount of exercise or take care of themselves as physicians would tell us to do. How can we overcome past habits to create this life that you're envisioning and that we would really like to have?
Well, first of all, I think the first thing would be to recognize that you have a habit that you want to change. In other words, not to just go on automatic pilot and continue with your habit without really acknowledging it, without fessing up to it. So the first step is to realize I have a problem, whether that's with drugs or whether that's laziness or whatever it happens to be. Just acknowledge that you have that problem and then make a plan to overcome it. Now, there are some tools that you can use to help you overcome it. Certainly, things like meditation are very powerful to help you to overcome bad habits. Also, affirmation, in other words, saying positive statements. And when you notice in your mind that you're thinking negative thoughts or that you're saying negative things, stop, forgive yourself for that. Just say, I forgive, either in your mind, you can think this or you can even say it out loud. Just say, I forgive myself for thinking that. I forgive myself for saying that. That's not the truth. The truth is such and such. So you just acknowledge that you've had this negative belief, this negative thought, this negative habit, whatever it is, and then just decide to change it in that moment. Now, it may take time for your actions to actually catch up to your thinking. In other words, you want to change, but maybe you're not really ready to change yet.
But it all starts with acknowledgement, correct?
Absolutely. And then forgiveness. Forgive yourself. And then move on to the positive way you want to live.
And Susan, as we tell our audience every week, if you want to achieve success and follow what our wonderful guests on the show are talking about, you have to take some action. It's not just listening. It's great to put these thoughts in your mind. That's the first step. You're hearing people like Susan talk about it and telling you how we can do it. But you have to take that action step if you want to break the habit of smoking or drinking or drug dependency or whatever it might be. take some steps and start to find out. Your body actually feels good. Mentally, you feel good about it. We're going to find out more about miracle prayer, but at this point in the show, we like to remind our listeners that you're listening to The Secrets of Success. My name is Bill Horan. The show is produced at the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. Stay